I think of the small Christian community that we can get stuck in, like your community of believers or your church or your youth group, and it's hard to get out of it.
So when I think of the words the Christian bubble, I think about people who surround themselves only with Christians. And maybe they do it because it's safe, and they think it's safer, or maybe just because it's easy. But somehow they find that all of a sudden the only people they're really interacting with are other Christians.
I think that usually refers to when people are only around Christians and never really around non-Christians at all, and so they're in this bubble.
So when I hear the phrase Christian bubble, I think of Christian home, I think of Christian school or workplace, and I think of church. Those places where we spend the majority of our time that are like Christian environments.
I would describe this as a place where Christians come together and are not exposed to the outer world or secular people.
So growing up, I spent most of my life outside of the Christian bubble, living outside of the Christian bubble. My family was a bit of a mess when I was growing up and at that time. So I actually kind of appreciate the Christian bubble, maybe more so than people who have lived inside that bubble most of their life. I get that it can feel suffocating at times. But when I was asked to kind of think about this question, I actually looked at it from a more positive point of view instead of being stuck in the Christian bubble, kind of appreciating that I'm a part of it. The example that came to mind was that before coming to Illiana, I worked in a public high school. And I worked alongside of some really great people, but some of those people had a bad language problem. And I'm not talking like potty mouth, because I sometimes have a potty mouth, but I'm talking about like harsh, vulgar, part of their regular vocabulary, taking God's name in vain in all sorts of creative ways that I didn't even know existed, like the kind of language that you need to have like a whole container of hand sanitizer like in your mouth, wash it out sort of thing. And I am not a person that is offended easily, so I'm like, why does this bother me so much that this is happening? And after kind of thinking about that a little bit more, I realized that the other parts of my life, I am not around people who that kind of language is a regular part of their vocabulary. And so it just kind of made me grateful for that isn't something that's a part of my everyday life. And because it's not when I was around it, it really was intensified. And so just something that I'm grateful for about being in the bubble, that's not usually something that I'm around.
Right. I would say one way I could see that is if I go to a funeral, I expect ham buns, which is a kind of a Dutch Christian thing. But seriously, I would say that when I find myself in the presence of a non-Christian, it feels quite different and strange. I have to stop myself from saying something that refers to Christianity or God, or not necessarily stop myself, but say it in a way that's sensitive to where they're at. So that kind of tells me that, because it doesn't happen very often, I am in a Christian bubble.
I'm a very extroverted person naturally, and I like to talk. But then when I find myself trying to talk about my faith or talk to others about Jesus, I get really shy, and I don't know why. It's just something that I shouldn't be insecure about it, but I am. It's just such a bold topic that I don't want to scare people away, which is ridiculous, but I don't get it. Yeah.
One way that I've seen myself acting like I'm in the Christian bubble is assuming that everybody has a personal relationship with the
How
Lord.
have I seen myself act in ways that show I'm stuck in a Christian bubble? So I'll be honest, this is a really easy thing for me. I teach in a Christian school, I go to a Christian church, my family for the most part is Christian, and so it's easy for me to be just surrounded by those people. And I'll sort of suddenly notice that I don't have any outside contact. So in order to have that kind of outside contact, I have to be really intentional. Like I have to really pay attention to who I'm hanging out with, or not that I can't hang out with any of those people. That's a lovely thing, but I just need to be really intentional about what's going on.
So do not be scared. Get to know people before you start pushing what you believe in. Don't just assume that they're just going to listen to you. Get to know what they're talking about. Respect what they're talking about, and get to know them before you try pushing on your beliefs.
Be courageous. God wants us to spread His word, and He'll give you the power and the courage and the bravery you need to go out into the world and talk about the gospel. And it's going to be hard, but in the end, if you work at it for a long time, it'll work.
Right. I'll say two things about that. One is, do start to find people that aren't Christians. It might be with your first job. You'll encounter some non-Christians there. It could be even closer to home, unfortunately, like possibly cousins or so. And then look for that, and then just wait a while, develop a relationship, and then you can start talking about Christ in a gentle way. I'll add one more thing too, is some people, not many, but some will go overboard and they'll react against the Christian bubble and try to pop the whole bubble and leave, and they'll say, "Fooey on Christians, I'm going to be around only non-Christians because I want to break this conservative Christian bubble that's annoying me." And then they go too far, and then they start to stray from the faith because they don't have that good influence of fellow Christians around. So I'd encourage you to look at not going too far as well.
Some advice for stepping out of your bubble. So I think the first thing you really have to do is pray about it, and ask the Lord to open doors, right, for people that you can see and talk to. I think the other piece is that don't start out with this big lofty, belief that you're going to go out and change everybody's faith. Like, why not just go to meet someone because people are cool, and start to make relationships with people. And then in relationships, you can share who you are. I mean, God calls us to go talk to people, but if we start out with these big lofty ambitions, it's just going to be too scary. And so pray, be courageous. Like, don't be afraid to talk to people. People really are cool. And so if you just go to get to know them, you're going to find people with really cool hobbies or great ideas to talk about. So just be courageous. Maybe include a friend, someone who you do know, and make it an event. But just start simple and stop worrying about making it such a big, grand thing.
So some advice that I could give is just actions speak louder than words. We are always being watched and observed by other people. And our actions say a lot about who we are as people. So something to ask ourselves is, are my actions drawing people toward Christianity, or are my actions pushing them away? And especially when people know that we're Christians. So whether or not they know we're Christians, they're watching us, they're observing us, they're making conclusions about who we are as people. But especially if people know that we are a Christian, they're gonna watch us maybe in a different way, to say, well, what's the difference between you and me? I'm not a Christian, but I'm a good person, so like, why would I want to be a Christian anyway? Like, what's different about you? And so just kind of making sure that we have that awareness of how am I acting? What are my actions saying about who I am as a person, who I am as a Christian? Many people turn away from Christianity because they've been hurt by a Christian. And it's like, well, why would I want to be a Christian if this is how they treat each other, if this is what being a Christian looks like? I don't want any part of that. And so we want to make sure that our actions fall in line with the kind of people that we're called to be, that God wants us to be, that we want to portray to other people, like it or not. our behavior, our actions are our witness. And people will notice whether or not we're kind of out there proclaiming the gospel, or if we're just going about our lives, people will notice that something is different about us. And hopefully that's something that's different is a good thing.